Hello and welcome once again to Crazy Comics and Stories. It's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. And at the other end of the series of tubes and wires that we call the internets is Joe, Crazy Writer. How you doing today, Joe?
Well, that was fast.
What did we do now?
Well, as of recording, last podcast had dropped. We dropped the preview show.
Yes.
And we were like, who do we think the fallen friend is? Well, hours ago, as we are sitting down to record this, it's been all over the web. Who's dying?
Yes, it was leaked.
Yep.
And I have to admit, I find it a cheat.
Me too. Because it wasn't even anybody that is
in the story.
Active. Yeah, well, she was in dark webs.
But she's not in the current story.
Which I've got to bitch about when we get to Freaking and Geeking. Yeah, I was kind of disappointed with that. Fallen friend. And yeah, she's a friend. Yeah, it could have an impact, even though everybody online is like, yeah, they did that with Doctor Strange. They killed him off, brought him back in time for the movie. Although my recollection was he died after the movie came out, but that's a different subject.
Joe, I have a couple of questions, though.
Well, what the thought was going to be is that everybody online seems to think they're killing her off so that when she comes back in a few months, it'll make a big deal because the Marvels will be coming out. And she's very heavy in that movie. And they'll remake her as a mutant. That
was my thing. Have you watched the Ms. Marvel TV show?
I have not. I've heard good things about it. It's on my to-do list.
In the TV show, she's a mutant.
Yeah. So
and her powers are different.
That's what I figure is the fail-safe. She'll find a way to rejuvenate through the mutant, mystic, magic, Marvel mayhem. Oh, I think I just coined a phrase.
And also there is they dropped the August Marvel previews already. And in that, there is a secret 4-part miniseries that more will be announced on later. They didn't say when.
I will have to say,
I have a feeling that 4-part miniseries is her resurrection as a mutant.
I will have to say I've seen the misogynistic haters out already. She was never popular. They've canceled her book multiple times. And when they canceled Moonlight like 6 times, Moon Knight 6 times. They've canceled Punisher 9 times.
Yeah.
So it's like, dudes, save it. You know, I sat at the library watching kids between that and the Black Panther exchange the graphic novel, talking about it very excitingly. When they finally dropped it and left, I swooped them up and brought them home and read them. And it's a good series. Just not for me. Although if I do get on Marvel Unlimited, I'll read the living bejesus out of it. Let's see.
And also, we may be getting together this Saturday.
Yeah.
Dreamhaven, one of the shops we did not hit during the free comic book day. I'm actually going to read it because it's actually a really cool story. We've been talking over the last month or so about a big collection of books that we were in the process of getting in. You've probably heard about it and maybe seen some of the goodies we have been able to rush into the store. We still have books filling up the basement, the garage, and the pod you may have seen outside on the sidewalk. So what has Greg done this week? Bought more books and more comics. In order to clear some space, we are going to take advantage of the lovely weather we're supposed to have this Saturday and put out tables of paperbacks on the sidewalk. Books that are all new to the store at the bargain price of $1 each. We don't know what you're going to find as they go straight from the garage to the sale. Come by and enjoy the weather as you get great deals on great books. $1 paperback books, noon to 6 p.m. on Saturday.
Yeah, which doesn't help you people out in the podcasting world because the sale will be over with. There's also another guy who does, he's the guy who bought all my comics for me when I closed out Hot Comics, Mark Murdo up in Coon Rapids, doing one of his famous garage sales. And he's got guys from another shop, Most Wanted Comics, coming up and dropping. So it's almost like a miniature con. And I was talking with Cory before we fired up the old podcast. Oh, my aching wallet. I haven't even gotten to my free comic books day stuff. with the exception of what we're going to talk about this episode. And I still have things buried that I want more. I can say that now because my wife's not in the house. You know, if she heard me, she'd be down here with some snarky comment. So just add your own.
Now, the comic, the Garage Day thing is interesting, but Dreamhaven sort of just saying, look, we're going to get rid of this stuff. That's one of there are a few things that are going on in the book and collectible and back issue comic, et cetera, world that I think are worth talking about. And that is what's actually affecting the business world in a way. Since the pandemic, you, no matter where you are, have seen signs now hiring. You've seen gas stations upping the amount that they're paying people, as well as fast food places. The gas station I stop at when I go to the group home, $50,000 for assistant managers. And assistant managers are basically cashiers who can do overtime. This is because we're getting the biggest wave of retirements in history. The baby boomers are retiring. It's happening at my office job. It's happening at the group home. The people who work in the office and have been there since the company started as community living and has been sold and renamed and everything, they are retiring because they're in their 60s. At my office job, people at the upper end of the company are retiring. People along a lot of the leadership positions are retiring. They're in their 60s and 70s. And there are more and more articles about how we are about to face what they call a permanent hiring crisis. Because for ages, it's been, the baby boomers and then the millennials are the two biggest generations. As the millennials the baby boomers worked longer than they were expected to. They worked into their late 60s, early 70s. But as of the pandemic, they started retiring, and they're retiring in huge numbers. This is one of the reasons why the stock market, even though everybody's showing massive profits, is down, because people are having to cash out parts of their 401k because they no longer have an income. Businesses are hiring and hiring and hiring because fewer and fewer people are working. Now, the amount of consumers has not changed, but the amount of workers, especially on the lower end, as people who've been in a job are getting bumped up because, oh my gosh, the management levels are all being depleted, so they're grabbing people. I get asked every quarter if I want to be moved into a supervisory position. I never want to supervise people ever again. Because, oh my gosh, those are the ranks that are thinning out. And there aren't enough people coming in at the bottom, your new workers and stuff like that, to fill the ranks. What does this have to do with what we talk about? As these baby boomers are retiring, and Joe even talks about it, they're like, well, we're going to downsize. We're going to get a smaller house. My parents have a 2-story farmhouse. And when my grandmother passed away, she had kind of a 1-story house with a full basement, and the basement was big enough there is an extra kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, and living room in it. But it's basically, a 1-level house. Well, they're getting older. My dad's almost 80. My mom's in her 70s. Going up and down some very steep stairs every day to go to their bedroom or to go upstairs where certain things are is getting harder and harder for them. And you've seen if you watch old TV shows on like MeTV, you've seen you can get this thing where you can sit and it will, it's a chair that goes up the stairs. The stairway is not big enough for that.
Well, and then you have the problem like our old buddy Jerome Winker, who in his home he has one and it broke down. Yeah. And he had to wait for someone to come and help him off it.
But when people buy smaller houses, they get rid of stuff. My parents have been giving away stuff for a long time. They're voracious readers. That's where I got it from. they will read a book and take it to the town library. And they bring grocery bags full of books to the town library. And now that my daughter-in-law works at a library, I could do the same thing as I tear through cheap paperbacks.
That's assuming they want them. It's a certain age where they don't want them anyways.
They don't want to put them on the shelf, but they'll sell them at the library sales to raise money. That's what she told me.
Cool.
So people are getting rid of things. Books, comics, records. When we go to thrift stores and stuff like that, you see tons of records from the 70s and 80s. When you go Uncle Hugo, when we were there and you bought some Star Trek books, they were like, do you want to buy more? We got a lot of whole Star Trek books. You want to buy some more, Joe? Greg was going to retire years ago, but he kept getting more and more collections of rare books, and he couldn't turn them down. He's got the fever.
He does.
And you know how I know he was going to retire? He actually had an Irish wake at Dreamhaven that I attended.
I think I was there as well.
And then a couple months later, I guess I'm not closing.
Nope. Yeah, I always tease him about that whenever I get a chance. I thought you were retiring.
So
not till I get rid of this stuff.
And there's just going to be more. As people, and we talk about, I see in the paper, estate sales. As people the baby boomers were one of the most consuming of the generations. They bought more stuff than everybody else. So you're going to have books and comics and all this stuff just kind of being dumped on the market. So I would check with if in your city, if you've got a science fiction store or a bookstore or a used bookstore or something, I would imagine that they are getting just buried under used books and stuff. For us readers, for us constant readers, it's a glorious time. I mean, Dreamhaven, it's going to have, no matter what it is, it's $1. They've got stuff from the 50s in there. They've got those Ace Double novels in there. They've got every, stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of just cheap reads. So if you are a buyer of such things, now is almost a golden age.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you're also going to see a lot of Bronze Age comics start hitting the market as people who were teenagers in the 70s, baby boomers, are, hey, what can I get for this?
Well, it's happening now. I was going to mention it earlier, but there's this group on Facebook. It's a private group called Comic Book Group. You can enter it too. Post after post of people selling comics, either a buy it now or a claim style or an auction. Like I'm looking at one here's where big Spider-Man, bunch of Spider-Man, Silver Age, all the way up to bronze. Here's another one selling slabs. A lot of these guys are probably guys who slabbed as much as they could during the pandemic, and now they're like, what am I going to do with all this stuff? It's hell on earth for me because I look through this stuff, and the problem is a lot of these guys, they ship things $10 for like 1 through 5 books, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot. And if I'm going to buy a book at $1, unless it's something I really, really want, I usually don't do it. For example, I told you about this, Cory. Top Secret Adventures Spyman #1. I picked that one up off this group. Why? It's the first, I never say his name right. It's Straczynski art. And this is, it looks sharp. Cut off a little at the top. It kind of cuts off the approved by the American Comic Code. But the price I got it at was just amazing. And I've never seen it. It might be a retro read in one of our future episodes. I don't know. So yeah, if you really want to go and be tempted, Check it out. Guys are blowing. Here's like a guy, he's blowing out a run of Sleepwalker. Here's the first Jim Lee X-Men, 2099 books. What gets me going is when you get back in the past, and especially Silver Age, Golden Age titles that I've never seen. Here you go, Batman Adventures number 12. I believe that's
first Harley Quinn, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Only 8.5 for $815.
Now we picked up a whole bunch of free comics
and stuff we bought as well.
But we're here to talk about the free comics.
Yeah.
We are going to
kind
of review some of the free comics we got.
We should mention that when we got together, and this will be a future podcast because, Cory recorded almost everything that happened. We ended up picking up Butch at the last minute. Thankfully, his dogs woke him up. No, he was ready. Where did we go? We had breakfast, and then we went to Granite City. We stopped at a boutique that Ali Garcia's wife runs. I picked up some stuff. We stopped at our favorite bookstore. Bookstore Revisited?
Books Revisited.
Books Revisited, thank you. And then Granite City. Tim was incredibly busy. Didn't really get a chance to talk to him much. He's the one who puts together every single free comic book day book for us. And he had them all laid out. I think it was you could pick up up to four, unless you bought them all like me. The other shops we went to, I'm trying to remember what they did. We stopped at Mind's Eye.
He didn't have any.
Well, their shipment got lost. I guess.
It didn't get lost.
That's
they can't get it until they move to their new place.
No, they were actually talking with Burl at the source. He said he got a different story.
Oh.
He said they didn't ship it to him at the right time, which translates into Diamond. Oops, yeah, we'll get it to you. So decide who's the truth. Doesn't really matter. They didn't have them, but they did let you pick 4 books off the shelf, which again is a great idea. They had sales going, and we each picked up 4 books. And the only reason we didn't stop elsewhere is because it was raining like crazy on the way. I was like, I'm not stopping until it stops raining. And it stopped raining when we got to Burnsville. We wanted to hit Hot Comics because they had a sale going. And then we did go to the source, and the source had grab bags in the back. 2 set aside, 1 for kids, 1 for adults. Show up, get a grab bag, go have some fun. And as of last week, when I stopped in on Wednesday, they had the kids grab bags. And they were just out front, take them, they have a great time with it and just move the stuff out. So how I went to this, how many comics were there? There was like at least 30, if not more.
43.
So out of that.
They should have cut it off at 42, damn it.
What I did is I went through and I just.
Wait, no, 44, because one of them was a surprise, the Spider-Man 2 comic.
What I did is I went through and I just pulled ones that I thought were interesting. I will read them all, but there were some that I really wanted to read. There were some that caught my attention. There were some the title caught my eye. And then of that, I just, I think what did we do? We limited it to 5.
Yes.
And I always like to give the honorable shout out to Free Comic Book Day, the Overstreet Guide to Collecting Comics for 2023, which any smart shop would load up a bazillion of these and just have them ready, especially for people that are new to collecting. At least that's what I would do if I still had a shop, because it's fun reading, it's in comic book form, and it kind of gives you a who's who or a what's what of collecting comics. So, and again, every year I give them a shout out. So I got my 5 set aside. I actually got them lined up. And I guess I'll just start off. The first one caught my attention is I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan D by Tom
Scioli.
Thank you. And I guess it's coming out in a book, I Am Stan, this September from 10 Speed Press. I'm curious, did you read this, Cory?
Yes. I also wanted to give a little background on it.
Yes, please, because I wanted to get your opinion on it.
Tom Scioli, a couple of years ago, did the I Am Jack, the Jack Kirby graphic biography. He also was the artist on Godland, which was a book from Image, where he pretty much drew it like Jack Kirby would have. He is a huge Jack Kirby fan. He is now putting out this book because the Jack Kirby one sold so well. He's doing a Stan Lee one. This was an excerpt from the book around the time Fantastic Four 1 came out.
I will caution you, there is a I Am Jack I Am #1 paperback by Susanna Gerby. So don't confuse the two. Plus, if you see the way Tom draws, you'll realize that. Now, the question I have, first of all, to me, it's very interesting. Some things I didn't know, some things I did. It goes fairly quick. I don't know where he gets his information from, but I have no reason to think it's not true. There's some questions I have, like there's eventually in the books, there's a thing where like Steve Ditko's waiting to drop off art and Stan doesn't want to talk to him. So just drop the art and go. And I'm like, doesn't really say why Stan did that. And it also leads up to not Jack. Sounds like that's when Ditko kind of just said, I've had enough. So that the questions like that, I mean, did you run across things like that?
It was different from the story I've heard. The story I heard was that when they started doing merchandising for Spider-Man, Ditko would ask, well, when am I getting my cut? And he and Mark Goodman went round and round about it. And then eventually Steve would show up when he knew Stan wasn't there. If you read the book, Stan would work from home 3 days a week. Steve would show up when Stan was not there. Hence why we have one of my favorite stories about Steve Ditko. Everybody who worked at Marvel would be given all of the comics that Marvel had printed. Partly because, hey, here's a perk, and partly so that they knew what else was going on. Steve would flip through the books, and anything inked by Vince Colletta, he would go into Stan's office and put it in Stan's garbage can so Stan knew what he thought. A lot of this is from different sources. It's from Stan's autobiography. It's from a couple books about Stan. It's from a lot of stories that have been around. I like the fact that in the Jack Kirby book, he does list his sources. So I imagine in the Stan Lee book, he'll do the same.
There is a caveat. The book by Tom is called Jack Kirby, The Epic Life, The King of Comics. So it's not I Am Jack, because I was looking for I Am Jack, which is why I found that other book. So, but again, just put in Jack Kirby with Tom Scioli. You'll find them. And don't be confused, because there's a bunch of from last 2020's free comic book day. You'll see a lot of those for like $1, $2. So don't buy that thinking I got the book cheap. Book's a little more expensive than that.
And well worth it.
Yeah, in fact, I'm ordering one now.
I really liked the excerpt from this too, because it didn't mythologize Stan. It didn't cut Stan down. It showed what it was like in the office, what it was like being an editor at a comic book company in the early 60s. And I think that's something that we fans miss, because even in the 70s, Marvel mythologized.
Oh, yeah.
We're all hanging out in the bullpen and having a great time. They did it in Fantastic Four 176. They did it in issues of Boom, when in actuality, there were very few people in the office. You basically came into the office, dropped off your work. Maybe you'd hang out and stuff.
The other thing
for the most part,
happens,
you worked at home.
A lot of people, when they're either demonizing Stan or, deifying Jack and Steve, they forget Marvin Goodman was pulling the strings. It wasn't Stan's decision whether or not to do anything. He was an employee, just like everybody else. Granted, he became the face, but he also elevated these guys to the fact that we know who they are. I got to tell you, when I'm eBaying stuff, and especially when I'm going through Silver Age and Golden Age, I use the Grand Comic Book database. Yep. They don't know who the hell did anything. They can guess, but they don't know for sure. So I think both you and I are on board with this one. This one made me want to buy the book. Matter of fact, it made me go buy the Jack book, which I've been doing off the eBays as we're talking.
And I think that is what Free Comic Book Day at this point should be.
What's your first choice?
My first choice is Animal Castle.
Oh, I didn't pick that one. Let's hear.
It is published by, let's see here, Blaze Comics. They're the ones who also publish the Cimmerian, which is the European public domain Conan stuff. It is written by Xavier Dorison. The artist is Felix Delep, who also does the colors. This is volume 2. It's the first part of volume 2. There are 2 graphic novels. And the reason I picked it is because when Butch and I were out and about, we would be looking through comics and you would be digging through the back issues, but we'd be looking at the new stuff. They had a couple full-page spreads in a book that we found. And the art just blew me away. Just really blew me away. And so when it's one of those where on Free Comic Book Day, it's like, oh, I need to pick that up when I see it. And then I opened up the box when I got home and, oh, cool, we get a sample of it. It is a world in which the animals have taken over. There are no humans. There used to be, but they're gone. They don't explain it. The animals all talk to each other. And there are some animals who are in charge and some animals who are servants. I don't know what that was, but it sounds like you've been...
I'm printing stuff.
Ooh.
I can multitask. I can also mute.
But the art in this is absolutely beautiful. The story feels like a novel in that there's a lot of characters, there's different plot threads going on, and for I think about a 24-page story, it gives you a lot of stuff going on. I was really impressed by this, and when it's done, I now want to buy this comic, which is what this is for. The art is absolutely gorgeous. The coloring as well. The pages have thematic coloring where at night he only uses certain colors. In day he uses certain colors. Inside certain buildings he uses certain colors. And the color is part of the art in such a way that it influences the mood you feel as you read it. I cannot praise this comic enough. And when I do my next comic order, I am putting in for Animal Castle Volume 1. And I don't know if I will buy it as regular comics or just wait for the trades. But I was really impressed. Blaze is one of those companies that they've got their section of previews. And when they show you the art, it's usually small. It's like, okay, we're going to put 4 pages on 1 page. So it really doesn't show off the art as well as it does when you just pick up the comic and look at it. So Animal Castle, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good package. Another thing about a lot of the Free Comic Book Day comics, they had ads for TCG Player, which is Diamond's new marketplace for comic books, trading cards, and supplies. You can shop comics from your local store on that website. So Diamond was pushing that really hard in all of their Free Comic Book Day books. Joe?
I picked up the Last Comics on Earth. This is a Free Comic Book Day. I'm trying to figure out who it's from. It's Penguin Random House. Apparently it's a series of books, and it deals with
there it is.
A new dawn for the last kids on Earth begins. And apparently what happens is these kids all live together and they're all superheroes and none of them know it. So when they all have to take off, such as like when zombies attack, of course, there are all sorts of zombies there because it starts out in apocalyptia. Because in a regular day, you only need a light jacket and a sword because you need to be prepared for anything in a city where creatures from every end of the earth coexist. There's Zombie Apocalypse, a dependable classic. There's the one that the Dragon Kingdom that collapsed. Dragons don't make great monarchs eventually. There's the interdimensional apocalypse. It's metal. Then there's the Robogeddon, which was my first chuckle because as you're looking, you see there's Robbie the Robot, there's RoboCop, there's Twiki from Buck Rogers, Wally, a Dalek. Now, come on, if this is for all ages, how are these kids going to know these references? And then, of course, there's the apocalypse where it really did rain cats and dogs. So now it's only cats and dogs, and they still don't get along. So as the various events happen, all these guys have to take off. And so they make up, lame excuses to leave because they don't realize that everybody else is a superhero. And then they find out the Rogue Gallery is the Stapler, which is a giant staple. And then Target Carp, which if you remember those singing fish that were all the rage last decade.
Yes.
I'm not a manatee, I'm a carp. And then there's Kitten Heels, editor note. Ask before you cut pictures out of my kitten magazine, Dirk. It's a little picture of a kitten. And then, of course, Wind Ego. If you can't handle me normal evil, you don't deserve me at my most evil. This book, then everybody decides they have to take out. And of course, the pet's like, how do these kids not realize they're all superheroes? They live together. Well, what makes the excuse? I have to go to the bathroom, and if I take a while, it's not because I fell in. The next one, I have to take Meepu for a walk, a robotic dog, a.k.a. Battlestar Galactica. Next one, I have to go feed my grandma. And the last guy, I have to take Dirk's grandma for a walk. Why has the pet face palms? Because he's the only one there. So they all change into their super egos. Dode Baker, Inventorous Dude, Moonstar, the Quasar Warrior, Fantabular Lord of Space, the Savage Aloner, Boy Lightning, and the boy with superpowered brainstorms. And what do? Well, that's the end of the preview. The truth is, Quentin have to go to the bathroom. Meepu already had been on a walk. Dirk's grandma wasn't even hungry. No, our heroes just need an excuse to sneak away to their secret lairs. And then after that, there's an ad where you can get some walkie-talkies, where it's a walkie-talkie that walks with legs. Hey, I'm walking here. And of course, there's C way behind specs. This is just a humorous, silly, fun superhero type book. Max Breuer writes it. Let's see. New York Times, USA Today, Wall Street Journal best-selling author for creds. Joshua Pruitt, as well as an Emmy Award-winning TV writer, the only human being on Earth to have written for both Mystery Science Theater 3000 and Doctor Who. Jay Cooper has illustrated over 20 books for kids, young and old, including things like Your Guide to Not Getting Murdered in a Quaint English Village, which I think will be my next thing I'll look up on eBay. And Douglas Holgate, who is illustrator of the #1 New York best-selling series, The Last Kids on Earth from Viking. And it's now an Emmy-winning Netflix animated series. Good humor, a QR code to check it out. The ads in back show the books. There's a line of toys. There's an ad for some of the other stuff that they do. This actually succeeded in getting me interested in this property because I will probably go check out the Netflix series. I don't know if I'll buy the graphic novels, but if I do see them, I probably will pick them up. It's kind of like the DC ones with Raven and Beast Boy. I read the preview. I kind of liked it. And I just found it refreshing and funny. And there's no way a kid is going to get half the jokes that these guys drop. I mean, it's like it's got humor where I recognize it and had a laugh. And I'm pretty sure if you give it to your 12-year-old friend or nephew or niece, whomever, they're going to enjoy it as well. So this one succeeds as well. What you got next for us, Cory?
I have one that doesn't succeed.
Uh-oh.
And that is The Sacrificers from Image. It is by Rick Remender, Max Fuimara, and Dave McCraig. If you ask me what this book is about, I would not be able to tell you. Our opening sequence is about a very religious family of birds, and one of them the father is upset with. Then we go to a flame-haired human woman who's dealing with demons and horrible creatures and stuff. And then we go back to the family of birds who are asked that they need to offer up one of the family members for a sacrifice, and the father says, "We have none to give. Our sacrifice died last winter." There is a fine line between having your opening chapter be mysterious and wanting to bring you in and curious about what's going on, and being so obscure that the reader kind of scratches his head and goes, "What the hell?" Animal Castle, very good at giving you a lot of information so that you want to see what's happening next. This, by the end of it, it was like, I have no idea how these two stories are connected. The whole sequence with the father being upset with one of the children for an unknown reason was a whole lot of pages where a whole lot happened, and I still have no idea what's going on. And then humans and bird people, we don't know anything about this world. We don't know how the world works. We don't know why there are these two different races of beings. We don't even know if the flame-haired woman is connected to the bird people. And by the end of it, I was so confused that the last few pages I just kind of skimmed, hoping that maybe, oh, here's what connects them. We never get that. We never understand what's going on. It's very poorly put together, which actually is a bit shocking for Rick Remender, because he's had some really good series. I liked his run at Marvel. I like Deadly Class a lot. I like Black Science a lot. You're a big fan of The Scumbag. But at the end of the day, I just finished this as being confused, and there wasn't enough here to make me want to pick up more. So, swing and a miss from Image on that one. Joe?
All right, the next one I picked up, I'm a sucker for anyways. The Marvel offering, one of them, Uncanny Avengers. Now, I don't really have an interest in Uncanny Avengers. The first one was okay. This one had me change my mind. There's a lot going on. I do got to admit, I am very tired of the whole, we hate mutants, we have to destroy them. What's the latest? What do they call the group that's doing Orcus? Yeah, okay, whatever. But there's something going on behind the scenes, because what got my interest is, first of all, when I read this, I just read, Uncanny X-Men. I didn't catch the Avengers, even though Cap's right on the cover. But as it goes on, somebody attacks Captain America with they're trying to take him out, and it's a well-orchestrated attack, and had not the unlucky, well, I should say lucky for Cap, appearance of a certain X-Men, it wouldn't have happened. Cap would probably have been done. And of course, you get to where I'm reading this, I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? We got to wait till it actually comes out, because everything has pretty much been previewed. So, yeah, this is for when is this? I don't know when it's coming out. Probably
It's August.
Yeah,
coming out in August. I was surprised that it's only a 5-issue miniseries.
Yeah.
because I thought it would be another series. It is part of the Fall of X.
So well done, Gary Duggan and Javier Garon. The next is something I'm excited for just because you put the name Hickman on something, and I will probably read it, and I will try to pay attention, Jonathan. I promise I won't have to wait for the graphic novel. We're talking about gods. What happens when the powers that be meet the natural order of things? I think we've talked about this, or if not, I've drooled about it.
Yes.
And this is kind of just a little whet your whistle for it, because the rest of it's coming out. They don't say. Or if they did, I missed it and I was too excited. So, looks good, reads well. I guess we're starting at the ground level and we're going to discover things about science and magic in the Marvel Universe that we did not know. Again, Jonathan Hickman, Billy Rowe. I'm going to say shitty just because it's spelled that way, but Shiti, Schiti. Give me a call, Valerio. Well, shitty. We'll have you on and we'll talk about it. Couple ads.
Operators are standing by.
They are. Well, sitting by, actually. So this was fun. Again, I'm a natural for this one. I think these are teasers. I don't believe they will show up in the first issue, but they do show up in the inevitable collected editions. So, excuse me. So if you're prone to wait, do so. Otherwise, I think I'll be recommending this when it shows up in the previews next month. What you got next, Cory?
The next one I have is Seismic Stories from Aftershock. This one actually kind of surprised me because Aftershock is they ran into financial trouble, and in the last few issues of previews, they're just hawking the old stuff. But this had two stories. The first was a short story for Animosity, which is a series they've had going for a while. This is by Marguerite Bennett and Joe Phillips. It is a short story about the difference between people who are okay with the animals taking over and those who are not. And it's weird in that it has some of the same ideas as Animal Castle, except Animal Castle has much more of a medieval feel to it. This very much has this is the modern world feel to it. But it's a short story. It's only, 4 pages. Tells a complete story, lets you know what these stories are like, what this world is like, and a really good teaser. Whoever put this together, both writing, art, and editorial, great job. You did such a good job that I'm interested in it. And then the rest of the book is The Darkness We Brought Back, which is one of the things that I've noticed is ever since Something is Killing the Children, every company is rushing to do a horror story with what they call a mystery box, which is there's something in the story that you don't know yet, and it's all around the characters, how they interact with this mystery that may or may not eventually be revealed. It's an old storytelling type, but they haven't used it in comics a lot. In this book, the mystery is the old, the Abernathy house. The house itself is gone, but the doorway is still there. And people go to the doorway and they say that the doorway is haunted. But when you step through, you go to another place where there are beautiful things and monsters, and you may or may not be able to escape. So it's almost two stories. We get one story that shows a young couple who go there on a dare and sets up the danger of what's there. And then the next is going to lead us into the series. It's a group of teenagers who decide that they're going to do it, even though they've heard all of the stories. They walk in, and we then get a cliffhanger of what awaits them. So it's a tease, but unlike the Sacrificers, it's a tease where you know what the stakes are, you care about the characters, and it's, oh my gosh, what's next? That's what these books need to be. When you reach the end of the book, you should be, I want to read more. it's like a good first chapter or a good first episode of a TV show. And the art is done in a very, very animated style. Not a lot of extra lines, not a lot of detail. It's very cartoony art, and it works for the story because you're also introducing a lot of horror elements. The characters are all very, very different, so that it's easy to keep track of who's who. Even though they're not in costumes, they all have their specific way of dressing. And the darkness we brought back really looks fun. It looks like a fun horror series. So we've also got in the ads, we have that TCG player ad, but there is also an ad for the Hero Initiative, which is a charity where money is raised to help older creators or comic creators who've fallen on hard times. I want to mention it because writer Len Kaminski, who worked for Marvel in the 90s, has recently had a situation where he had a fall and was put in an extended care facility. Now, the problem is he can't get out of the extended care facility because he has no money. His time in the extended care facility drained his resources, and he doesn't have a home to go to. And they can't let you out of facilities like that unless you have a way to support yourself and a home that is safe for you to be in. Because he's wheelchair bound, he would need kind of a wheelchair friendly place to live, and he doesn't have a place to live. And he's running a GoFundMe, but I also directed him toward the Hero Initiative. And I said that Jim McLaughlin, who's one of the guys who runs it, let him know that I sent you, because Jim McLaughlin and I worked together at Shinders back in the 80s. And I haven't heard back, but I'm hoping that Len is able to get some help from them. They've done all sorts of wonderful work. Just go to theheroinitiative.com. But I like the fact that there's an ad for that in this comic. Joe?
How many more we got?
I have done 3, so this will be your 4th.
All right. Let's see. We want to go positive or negative?
Doesn't matter to me.
All right. Okay, DC. I tried it. Dawn of DC Night Terror Special Edition. We talked about this. Cory and I are not impressed with it. Mainly because it's a hell of a lot of, we know, you're replacing July and August, the regular books with these books. Some books like Shazam have just started. But I went into this reading and thinking, okay, this is your chance to convince me. Again, I had zero interest in Uncanny Avengers. Their book convinced me. This gave us a little bit of a peek. I really liked Robin. Again, this is I can't think of his name.
I don't even know who you're talking about.
The current Robin.
Bruce Wayne's kid?
Yeah.
Damian
Wayne.
Wayne.
That brain just totally shut. They're like, I'm going, Tim. No, not Tim. No, not Kray. So whomever this is that's attacking the heroes goes after Robin, which is interesting because Robin has very good control of his dreaming self, meaning, as he says, my dreams means my rules. Yeah, he's still getting attacked, but whomever is trying to freak him out isn't winning because Damian's in control of his brain, for better sake. There's a scene where, like, he thinks he's waking up and he's like, oh, Bruce, I just had the weirdest dream, son. It'll be okay, I promise. And then, of course, weird eyes, and I'll make sure you never sleep again. What does he do? Tim puts his feet through the guy's face. Gross. I mean, that's what he says, gross. And this is kind of just the beginning of it. And it goes on saying that Night Terrors is a terrifying 4-issue limited series written by Joshua Williams with art by Howard Porter and Gilliam March, in which Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman find the body of one of their earliest enemies at the Hall of Justice. Their investigation takes them past the land of the living, beyond the land of the dead, into the realm of nightmares. The only way to save the world is to call for help of an unlikely hero, Dead Man. It's a horror-focused event, and I'm not big on horror comics. It'll take over DC publishing line in July and August and feature multiple 2-issue miniseries from exciting creative teams. It looks like, from what I read in the previews that we've already covered, mostly the teams that are currently on the book. So it's not like they're pulling new people in. They give you some art to give you an idea of what's what, who's terrorized by what. And what I'm assuming are some covers. And, of course, a blurb for the Dawn of DC, some DC Essential graphic novels, the Dawn of Green Arrow. It all starts here. And apparently on June 16th, the Flash movie is coming out. So if your goal is to get me to want to buy this, it didn't really work because I was kind of against the idea to begin with. And as I said in the previews episode, I'm more prone to buy something like this in graphic novel form or wait to see if it pulls a convergence. And I'll be picking them out of quarter buttons for the next year and a half. I don't think so because I think this has a better premise. The only thing, again, when I read Convergence, I noticed it was like every story was the same. You know, the heroes that we haven't seen, the original Captain Marvel family, Shazam for you and I, they're together, then they hear a voice, and then they fight. Meanwhile, over in Green Arrow, same thing happens. Over in Green Lantern, same thing happens. The most interesting thing about Convergence was the actual Convergence miniseries. In this case, I'm waiting to see if people react to it well. I definitely will pick up the trade. If not, I will see. But again, I'm not impressed with it. If you are, you put DC horror or these characters like Dead Man, put them together, pick this one up and check it out because this is a great preview, and you can decide if you're going to spend all that money picking up this. Well, I hope it's a well-planned crossover. But boy, I tell you, if I was a comic shop, I would not be happy trying to order this stuff. How about you, Cory? What do you got next?
Next up is from Fantagraphics, the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers Freak Comic Book Day 2023.
Oh,
also
you took
featuring
mine.
Fat Freddy's cat.
You took mine.
Now, these are classic Underground comics that are... Now, Undergrounds were mostly known for breaking barriers and doing things you couldn't do in regular comics. Gilbert Shelton's work on the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers was basically drug humor. And the Fat Freddy's cat was sort of a anti-comic strip because it was a comic strip about the cat who lived with the Freak Brothers, but did stuff that actual cats do.
Like get sucked up into outer space adventures. Oh, I'm sorry. That came later in his own series.
Yeah, that comes later. This is more,
much later.
About shitting on the carpet and accidentally eating the pot. And
yeah.
Now, most of the Freak Brothers for their existence were one-page comics. They were in a lot of underground newspapers and alternative newspapers as a one-page comic strip, and then he would collect them into the comics. But then as those started to fade, he started to do more continued stories and longer stories. This has a good mix of each. It's got some of the short stories. It's got a lot of the one-page gags. My problem with it is, and this is my only problem, this art was all drawn for black and white. Fantagraphics has added color to some of the strips. And I don't think the color helps the art in any way, shape, or form. For me, it was drawn to be in black and white, so it looks better in black and white. If you go to page, what is this page? 1, 2, 3, 4. Go to page 4 and 5 and look at the difference in how easy each page is to read. The black and white page, very easy to read, works really well. The color page, a little harder because the color is really garish. It really pops off the page. It's very, primary color day glow stuff. And to me, almost obscures the art a little bit. But this is a fantastic sampler for what the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers were. In the back, we get a kind of a nice 2-page spread of the kind of stuff that Fantagraphic prints, with the undergrounds, the stoner comedies, and regular comics. And then on the back, they talk about how they will, about the four Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers books, taking advantage of the Hulu series, which I watched a couple episodes of, and it was okay. It wasn't great. But I think it's really cool that Fantagraphics is giving it a big push. I thought this was an excellent sampler of the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers. If I didn't already have the 2 big books that reprint everything, I would probably be buying the Fantagraphic trade paperbacks that reprint everything. Joe?
I will second that one, because that was on my list as well, because you've heard me go over and over how much I love Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers. This is how I learned about sex and drugs growing up. Nothing from mom and dad, nothing from school. So I was just happy I was able to read these. I've long since sold off my collection and switched over to the 2 trades. So definitely worth picking up. So with that said, I think I will jump in and pick the Star Trek one from IDW, Free Comic Book Day, which is a Day of the Blood prelude. Now, I'm on the fence right now because the crossover is where I was going to check out of the current series. The current series isn't really doing it for me. I don't know why. It's well written. It's drawn in a way that you can kind of see what's going on. This particular preview is a prelude. It gets the events going that'll happen. It'll cross over between Star Trek Defiant and the regular Star Trek, go into the Star Trek Annual. Oh, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. It doesn't go into the Star Trek Annual. It goes into the miniseries Day of Blood in July, Defiant Star Trek in August, and then Defiant Star Trek in September. And I like the previews. I think they did a good job getting it ready with what's going on. The storyline that was going on in Star Trek with Kahless coming back and creating all sorts of mayhem it really didn't do it for me. But this almost has me over the edge, IDW. I almost want to pick it up. I would definitely pick this up in book form, like I did your Mirror Mirror, because I think you had that as a Free Comic Book Day sampler. And I don't recall if in the Mirror Mirror book you actually put in the Free Comic Book Day thing. I want to say you didn't, which kind of torqued me off. So if you do it this time around, put the prelude in it. I mean, if Marvel and DC can do it, you can do it. The rest of it covers ground that I've already enjoyed. I absolutely love Star Trek Lower Deck. I recommend the comic. I recommend the book. And, of course, this has a preview in it, which you can enjoy because whoever's writing it gets the fact that they're doing it in a comic book format, and also gives you a lot of, I don't know, they get the same type of humor going. Looking as I delay, trying to figure out who wrote it, but they do. I don't see it, but you can pick that up in trade, or like I was able to find the issues out there. They do some ads for the other Star Trek books. They also cover, I thought this was funny in the back. Do you prefer Jean-Luc Picard good or evil? Good? You can pick up Star Trek Picard Stargazer, which is set in between seasons 2 and 3 of the hit Paramount series, which joins Captain Jean-Luc Picard as he takes the helm of the USS Stargazer, explores forgotten worlds, and confronts demons in his past. Or the evil, as I mentioned before, Star Trek Mirror War. Collects 1 through 8 of the Star Trek Mirror War. This is the ISS Enterprise D, who are intent on bringing the Terran Empire to the height of its former merciless glory. And I actually enjoyed that quite a bit. And if you flip back one page, you got a bunch of other trades. There's the Lower Deck one, the Mirror War, the one I did not pick up Star Trek Final Year of the Enterprise. All 4 issues are there. They do a good job of promoting all the trades, which are always in print. And of course, once you know what they are, you can always go find them. If you're a comic book guy, you can always go try to find them. So this was I'm still on the fence. I still got a couple days before I have to commit to my previews order. But well done, IDW. You got me thinking on this one. Cory, what you got for our last one?
The last one I have is from Opus Publishing. It is the Frazettaverse. This is a sampler of the 3 comics based on Frank Frazetta paintings. The first one is a short story for Death Dealer, Enter the Norseman, written by Mitch Iverson, drawn by Richard Pace. The art is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. The story, however, Joe, would you rather read a story or somebody telling you about the story?
It depends. If they're going to use all Frazetta paintings, you can tell me about it.
No. I mean generally.
Oh, generally?
Would you rather read a story or have somebody tell you what the story's about?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you do with comics. You show what's going on.
This very much read like somebody read a novel and then told you what it was about. The story breezes through things. It's linear to the, and it really just, okay, here's the cool image on this page. Here's the cool image on this page. Here's the cool image on this page. And it reads more like a tell, don't show. As if they're condensing an entire story down to 8 pages. So if this was supposed to get me excited about buying the comic, it didn't, because I have no idea what the storytelling is like, other than, boy, I did not like the writing on this. The next one, Mothman, is written by Tim Hedrick and pencils by Andrea Moody. This is based on a painting that I have never seen from Frank Frazetta, although they do show it, and it's Frazetta's weirdest creation, takes flight in his own series. And it's trying very hard to be a horror comic about a mystery, but much like the Sacrificers, the Image book, it was too mysterious for me to care about anything. And at the end of it, I was not hooked. And then the last one, Frank Frazetta's Dawn Attack, they show the painting, and this is all about the art. There are 2 people who wrote it, Jody Hauser and Eric Campbell, but the art is Diego Yapur. This is, 6 pages. Not much happens, but out of all of the stories in this is the one where it reminds me a lot of the early heavy metal, where you didn't care about the story. You were looking at the art and how pretty the art was and how well the art was drawn. This is very much just, a warrior woman killing her way across the countryside. So to me, I may pick up the trade paperback if it's at a decent enough price just to get the Diego Yapur art, but I more would like to look for Diego Yapur art in other places, because boy, this art is really, really good. Reminds me a lot of the heavy metal art of the late 70s, early 80s. Well done, beautiful coloring on it, and the end of the day, that's the only one of these that jumped out at me enough that I would be willing to buy it. So while I'm sure that the Frazettaverse, basically it's, okay, here's some really gorgeous art. That's what they're going to be selling these books on. The only one that jumped out at me enough was and I want to get the name of it right again, Dawn Attack is the only one that really jumped out at me as one that I would be interested in. Now, I read a bunch of other stuff, and we may talk about some of them in the future, but the ones that we liked were ones where at the end of it, they had done a tease that hooked us. And I think that's exactly what Free Comic Book Day should be now, because while you're going to get a lot of quote unquote civilians, the only ones who are going to read the stuff and get hooked and have never read comics before, in my opinion, are going to be kids. There aren't going to be a lot of people who've never read a comic before who picked up the Conan Free Comic Book Day and went, oh yeah, now I need to read comic books. This was more, okay, you've read Conan before, here's what we're going to do with it. Or Red Sonja. Hey, we're revamping Red Sonja. Here's what it's going to be like. Joe, any final thoughts on the Comic Book Day free comic books?
Not really. Like I said, I read through about 10 of them. I did read the Conan one. It didn't make the cut. I thought they did a good job on that one. Let's see. I'll just mention in passing the other ones I read. The Spider-Man Venom, which was meh. The Conan one was good. I did read The Best Comic Ever, and I didn't agree. And then I read Jeff Lemire's Fish Flies, which, again, no idea what's going on, but intriguing enough where I may pick up the trade. Although probably not the series.
You know who also has stuff that you would enjoy?
Who's that?
These guys, our sponsors. And me, with all these other things I do.
Yay!
The Solitaire Rose Radio Network is currently on a pause, basically because COVID-19 has made it so that I have to work a lot of extra hours at both jobs. But you can still go and listen to my other podcasts. Now, you're probably listening to Crazy Comics and Stories, which is the main podcast. But on this same feed, KRAYZCOMIX, is Solitaire Rose Radio, the solo radio podcast that I do. I've done interviews, I've done short stories, I've done all sorts of things, and you can get to it right here on this same feed. I also do a podcast called Novelcast, where I take the novels I've written and turn them into free audiobooks. That's over at novels.solitairerose.com. Dangerous Dan Moore and I, and of course Wolfie B. Bad, give you bad advice over at badadvice.solitairerose.com. You send in your questions, and we give you the aforementioned bad advice. And then myself and Adam Vermillion from For the Love of Comics do the Fantastic Forecast at fantasticforecast.solitairerose.com, where we go through the issues of the Fantastic Four, 4 issues at a time, to give the plot and commentary on each issue. That's not all. Yes, I'm crazy. I still, over at pwinsiderelite.com, every week on Wednesday, do a recap of the latest episode of AEW Dynamite. I write up what happened, and then myself and Anthony Pyrus will do an audio. Now, you can only listen to the audio, if you remember, at pwinsiderelite.com, and if you're a wrestling fan, you should be, where we then break down the episode, talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, give it a grade, and let you know if you should have watched that episode. Those are the other podcasts here at the Solitaire Rose Radio Network. Thanks. Joe, I do have to tell a very quick hanging at the home story that has nothing to do with the clients.
Cool.
One of the nurses was in to train me on how to administer medications to someone who doesn't take them normally. And she'd driven in for an hour and a half, so she wasn't just going to, train me for a half hour and leave. She sat with the clients, worked with them, and then sat with us in the office area and chatted. And myself and the person I work with, who I consider a friend, were talking about all the stuff we do. And when it got to the end of it, she was like, wait a minute. She went over what the other person does, which is a lot, but they just got done with college and are going to be doing internships to see what area of anthropology or archaeology they want to get into. I told them that they need to do nutritional anthropology. But when she got done with me, she said, all right, let me see if I have this straight. You have 4 jobs and you write. And when do you have time to sleep? I don't. I have no idea how I get all the stuff done that I get done, Joe. You know what other thing I like to do?
Well, obviously not sleep.
Read old comics. Do you have a retro review?
I didn't, because we met up with a guy at Granite City Comics, and I thought I would do I don't know if it's a current review or an old review.
It's current. I guess that he did one while he was in college and one right after he got out of college.
But if you notice, let's talk about it. It's a gentleman, Brandon John, and I talked about him way back when I got a 4-page preview of his comic. His comic is called Nut, and I'm trying to see, in my vast accumulation of crap, if I know where it is. And I'm not going to spend any time digging for it. But I kind of talked about it. I mentioned it here. And apparently number 1 did come out, and I didn't know about it because the copies we got are second prints. So he must be doing well enough to do a second print and a number 2. He was at Granite City Comics signing his books, and he also had some of his art on display down the block at the Paramount Center for the Arts for free. Now, we didn't go to that because it's free comic book day. We drove up to St. Cloud. We wanted to get back into the cities. So anyways, we got a hold of his comics, and the first one, again, this is a second print. I guess it has 2 different covers, one by Brandon John, one by Bruce Topola, so depending on which one you got. And I got to admit, I didn't really know what was going on. It was kind of rolling through. The art was pretty good. I mean, you could tell the different characters in that, but this guy was small. It looked like he was squatting in an apartment. He was supposed to be evicted. There's a cat there. Several times people tried to evict him. He ended up throwing up, and the cat apparently didn't like it either and threw up, and then the throw up started tormenting him, and he apparently finds a pencil and banishes whatever his vomit turned into, and as it's slowly fading away, it's threatening him. You can never escape. Dread never leaves you. I'm just looking through the first issue. There's some ads and stuff, but what happens is now, so this one came out 2022. Now, in the meantime, he apparently got up, and like Cory mentioned, he moved last February, down to St. Paul. And he was able to get a full-size proper desk. Brandon's got decent lighting where he draws, a gas oven. And he had the pleasure of attending 2022's Twin Cities Comic Con at Minneapolis Convention Center, where he had Nut number 1, and he's going to be at the Comic Con as well in 2023. And if you want to know more, you can go to row 7 as in the number, .squarespace.com. Now, in number 2, he must have learned a little bit more because he started to describe just what the hell was going on. So it's almost like number 1 was just a dry run or a wet run, depending on how he heaves. And with number 2, it goes back and it kind of describes where he is and why he is, and that the pencil he picked up was indeed magic, and he's able to do now magical things with this, such as give his landlord enough money to get him off his case and give people food, and not enough though to keep the despair away. Remember that that vomity thing that was threatening him? So it comes back, and so it's a little bit more descriptive as to what's going on. Once I read 2, I went back and read number 1, and it made a little bit better sense. And I think if you talked to Brandon, I got to talk to him a little bit at Granite City, he would actually agree with you that, yeah, what happened, I think he learned a little bit more. And consequently, issue 2 was much more satisfying, if not strange, than issue 3. As most independent comics and self-publishers, you will pretty much know instantly whether he's your cup of tea or not. I'm not saying you should go gaga and buy everything he does. Well, actually, I am because I did. But for me, I'm willing to drop. I think what did we pay? $10, 2 issues for $10.
I think so. Yeah.
Them. I'll give him my $10 because I've always loved supporting independent artists. Whenever I go to cons, that's what I look for: independent artists or people I know, Terrence Creep, even Dan Jurgens, Gordon Purcell, that are doing stuff that I can pick up and try to help them with. If I may, I'm gonna make a little detour here because we didn't mention this at our when we were going through previews last week, but Dan Wiesenmeyer, one of the original runner of Hot Comics, is doing a comic cover for the X-Men Hellfire Gala 2023 #1. He's doing it in the X-Men 97 style. If you recall, Dan was a showrunner for the X-Men cartoon. So he's very well versed in that. He was a big part of the book that came out, The Art of the X-Men animated. I did not know he was doing this. And he says, yep, his first, he said it's his first X-Men cover, but he did do an X-Men animated adventures way back in the day. So again, go back, and if you're going to pick up the X-Men Hellfire Gala, pick up the Wiesenmeyer one. At least I am. And then I got to figure out how to get him autographed. So again, I love supporting the small press. I love supporting these guys. I'm interested to see where he goes because he says this fall will be the final part in the birth of the Nutverse. So apparently he's going somewhere with this small, pathetic little guy who's haunted by his vomit and has a magic pencil. Cory, now you read it as well. What did you think?
I have not read it, actually.
Okay.
I have not had time.
Hey, fair enough. So I look forward to seeing what you think. Because again, I'm a sucker for these types of books, so I'm probably a little more, how would you say, forgiving?
Receptive.
Yeah, receptive. That'd be, and forgiving, But since it is retro review, oh, by the way, remember you can probably go get your copies of 1 and 2 from, probably second prints. I should probably go see if I can find a first print anywhere. I'm kind of anal that way. But again, I'll just drop the website. Pardon me while I dig it up. Excuse me while I whip it out.
Woo! I should get that sound effect.
Row 7, that's ROW7.squarespace.com. Or, I'm assuming if it's an @ that's Twitter, Row 7 Publishing.
Yes, that's Twitter.
Or row7publishing@gmail.com. And tell them the crazy guy sent you. You'll know who we are. Cory, what you got up for us for retro review?
My retro review is Marvel Spotlight, Volume 1, number 3. Joe, do you know what that comic is?
I do not.
It is the second issue of Werewolf by Night.
Oh, wow.
The first issue of Marvel Spotlight was Red Wolf, who was immediately spun off to his own book. Then Werewolf by Night had issues 2, 3, and 4, and then Ghost Rider started in issue 5. Werewolf by Night, this is the second story. It is written by Gary Conway, drawn by Mike Plug. They do not list the colorist. They do not list the inker. I would imagine that Plug inked himself on it because the book was, quarterly at the time. Can you imagine a quarterly comic at this point? I mean, that's planned to be quarterly and not just because the artist was late. So what it is in the first issue, we get the fact that Jack Russell, yes, that's a joke. I did not get that joke until someone pointed it out to me, by the way, Joe.
I don't think I did either until you mentioned it.
He's not a Jack Russell Terrier. He's a Jack Russell werewolf. So he has become a werewolf. He found out that his father was a warlock who also was afflicted with being a lycanthropy. He died. His mother married somebody who's awful and terrible. And then when she died on his 18th birthday, full moon came out, he became a werewolf. This is a story about how we get it's almost two stories in one. So because it's very early in the run, we need to know more about what his abilities and powers are. So a gang of bikers attack his house where he and his sister live. The bikers are chasing his sister. So he fights off a bunch of bikers. They think that it's a guy in a costume until, oh no, it's a real werewolf. Jack Russell, they haven't really solidified what's going on with him yet. You've got first-person narration of him telling the story as if he's an observer, but also they can't decide if Jack Russell is in control when he's a werewolf or not, because there are sequences where his thoughts are very much of him not being a werewolf, but there are other times when he's, thinking more like a beast than a man. And as you read this, the first thing to remember is when Gary Conway wrote this, he was 19 years old. He was very young when he started at Marvel. So we get an action sequence to start off. When the police come to see what's going on, one of the people with the police knows about werewolves, picks up Jack Russell, brings him to his house out in the middle of nowhere, where I have answers that you want. And the man takes him, and his very creepy sister starts asking him about the book. Jack Russell, of course, knows nothing about a book. No, you have to know about the book. And they tie him up, they torture him. When it's about to be the full moon, they lock him up. And the servant of the creepy woman and her brother is a simpleton with a claw for a hand. And that's the guy they use to fight the werewolf in the latter part of the story. However, the guy with the claw accidentally kills the brother during the fight. He is upset and confused and doesn't know why this is going on. The sister's very angry that he's done this, so she kills the guy with the claw. Meanwhile, Jack finds out a little about this book that his father had. It was called The Darkhold, but he doesn't know anything about it. The evil woman realizes that, no, it's true. He couldn't lie after the spell she cast. So it's very clear that Stan was not overlooking this very well. Because how does the story end? The woman is trying to find the Darkhold. In my dreams, I saw her again. I saw her in a darkened room, trying to evoke long dead gods, trying without the information she needed from the book called The Darkhold, trying and failing, and in the failure, meeting her penultimate end. I saw a candle flicker in the darkness, slowly gutter and more slowly die. I smelled burning cloth in my dream, and when I woke, the order was still with me. So basically, they all kill each other except for the woman who just kind of, well, we're out of pages, so I guess I'm just going to die. And he wanders off now knowing that he needs to find the Darkhold because it's this book of great power that everybody's looking for. Mike Ploog's art is beautiful. Even on the shitty paper back then, this was the art that made Mike Ploog a star, and in the omnibus, they printed on this really nice paper, and it's just gorgeous, very fluid art, very different from what Marvel was doing at the time. Ploog had a lot of EC influences, just like Bernie Wrightson. So you've got the Jack Davis, just figures feel like they're dripping with ink, and the Graham Ingle feeling of discomfort and horror that Bernie Wrightson usually went with. It's very clear that Wrightson and Ploog were kind of two peas in the same pod. Their art is very similar, and Ploog stayed mostly at Marvel and Wrightson stayed mostly at DC. But this is a beautiful book. but the story is just a mess. One of the things about a story is the protagonist is the one who drives the story. Not in this. The werewolf is just kind of, things happen around him and he has no control over any of it. Him being there does not affect the end of the story in any way, shape, or form. Matter of fact, he's chained up through most of the fight at the end. So Gary Conway still was learning how to put together a story. I imagine that it had to be a one-issue story with some plot threads that led on, because it's a quarterly, and it's really hard to have a continued story when your comic is quarterly, because you're expecting someone to remember everything 3 months later. But I imagine back then, horror was kind of hard to get. This was Marvel was making very tentative steps, because horror was not allowed by the Comics Code until 1970-71. So you had this, you had Dracula, then you had the Frankenstein monster. I would give this a borrow, unless you're a big fan of Mike Ploog, then of course you get a buy. The series got better as it went on, but man, the first issues, story-wise, beautiful but rough, really rough. And now we get to my favorite part of the show.
Fire drill.
No, not where I lay down on the couch and stare up at the ceiling after having about 47 THC gummies. Well, it's what the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers told me to do.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's Freaking and Geeking. Joe, what are you freaking on?
Apparently another comic shop's closing in our area. Manny's Comics, Cards, and Collectibles up in Monticello is closing. He says, sorry to announce that we'll be closing the store at the end of June due to lack of sales. I gave it my best shot, but still couldn't make it. He will have things for sale at mannyscomics.com. Thank you all who tried to support the store. So that's always sad to hear when a store is going. Let's see, we already talked about the Spidey death spoiler. I did read, as I mentioned before, oh, where the hell did I put it? Did I leave it upstairs? Oh, there you are. Dark Web. This was the crossover that the worlds of Spider-Man and the X-Men collide, and I passed by it in regular form because I figured I'd buy the graphic novel, and I'm kind of wishing I didn't buy the graphic novel. This was really a lackluster story. First of all, I don't know what the living blazes they did to Ben Reilly. I guess he lost his mind, got dumped in a vat of acid, and now is their version of the Joker or something. Because he doesn't have any memories. He wants Peter's memories. He's going to F over everything to do it. What just so happens, the Madeline Pride, who is now Queen of Limbo, decides she will do that because she wants her memories back. But what happens is, I don't even know if I want to get into it, because it's so soon that maybe some of you still want to read it and get excited about it. I'm not, although I got to say there was a character called Wreck Rap, who was a spiderized demon that I really enjoyed.
Yes, he was fun.
I did enjoy, oddly enough, the Ms. Marvel crossovers, because what ends up happening is, if I can find it, she's at Osborn Corp, which I didn't know, and she ends up getting tossed into limbo, where they're pretty much, you're in limbo, they're going to leave you there, and of course the bookmark fell out. Let me see, there was a Venom crossover, which I was like, meh. The X-Men part was okay. They did kind of resolve what was going on there, and at the end, I guess. Oh, here we go. I'm getting into the Ms. Marvel part. But yeah, she ends up getting tricked to stay in the hell. And first of all, I didn't realize she can grow huge, because she's a big shapeshifter as well. And she basically is beating the living crap out of everything in Limbo. And as she's doing this, the ones ruling her going, Ms. Marvel's like, I get the feeling you're all hungry, maybe hangry. I'm both. I recognize it because often I feel that way around 11 a.m. to around and 10:40 p.m. when I'm still in class but not paying attention anymore. I find chewing gum is helpful in staving off an appetite. She's busy just smacking the living shit out of these demons. And the two decide, she won't stop talking, not unless we kill her. What do you think we've been trying to do? And so they decide they're going to let her go. Not so much, but she says, she puts her fist down and basically she's standing huge at that. This is what's going to happen now. I'm going to very reluctantly build a throne atop your pulverized bodies because conquest might be the only language you understand. And you're going to apologize for treating your guests this way. And I'm not going to shut up until one of you shows me the way out. And then you got these two demons who are human-sized, itty-bitty, in front of a huge Ms. Marvel. You hear me? Starting now, you are all stuck with a cranky teenager as your intern leader. And if there's no Wi-Fi in this joint, that's going to be a problem. I laughed my ass silly at that. And needless to say, she got off Earth. The other thing that impressed me was, when they're all facing down everybody, and basically Spider-Man's like, I'm going to take care of this. And the Goblin Queen or whatever is like, no, you're not. And Spider-Man basically in her face says, yes, I am. This is my problem. So again, Spider-Man's got some grapefruits. Other than those two parts, it was just a dull read. I didn't like it. You may get different mileage. Again, when I complain about something, this is very much my opinion. I'm also legally required to say that most of the things I say are jokes. But yeah, this was not a good one. This is going probably back on the eBays. I'm kind of glad I didn't buy it as a regular series. I actually skipped it in the Amazing Spider-Man line. I wish I hadn't bought the thing. If you want to, I would say go check it out on Marvel Unlimited. It was a great idea. I thought it would be fun, but it just didn't work for me. Cory, have you gotten anywhere near Amazing Spider-Man 25?
Yes, I've read it.
Okay. Big spoilers, people. I cannot cut my mouth shut. I am so angry at this book. Not because of why or how they explained the thing with Mary Jane. I actually accepted that. I was a little relieved at that. She didn't get seduced by Norm Osborn and went off and had kids in France that we never heard about. Too soon? Anyways, here's what pissed me off. The way the heroes treated Spider-Man. They went about, the writing was in such a way that, Spider-Man is like, oh, something's wrong with Mary Jane. Okay, first off, these guys know who Peter Parker is. They know who Spider-Man is. The minute they said Mary Jane, they know who Mary Jane is. She lived in the Avengers mansion. They know Peter's had a thing for her, even if they don't remember them being married. That alone should have got them, okay, let's do something. But we got to wait for Reed, Captain America. Well, we got to wait a couple days to clear this up because there's a huge nuke-type crater with your costume in it. Okay, is this the same thing that when Spider-Man came to him in Marvel 2-in-1 Annual and said, I had this weird dream about this big spaceship, and Ben Grimm said, okay, well, let's hop in the Pogo rocket and check it out. Which, you think about it, is a lot less reason to get in a Pogo rocket and shoot in outer space because Spider-Man had a dream. No, Spider-Man has a very serious thing. He said, I need to get back to Mary Jane. And these heroes basically stonewalled him. Jeez, this is so convoluted, and I rarely say this. I just don't buy it. Spider-Man's been around long enough in the Marvel Universe. If he says there's a problem, you better believe him and do something about it, not just blow him off. Well, we'll wait till Reed gets back. Well, again, it was so convoluted. We have to do this, so he has to get the heroes pissed off, and he has to get everybody mad at him, so he has to rip off stuff from Reed. He has to do this. I was prepared to be angry about the whole, Mary Jane has kids thing, but the way they explain that, I can buy that. And in a way, I'm also kind of relieved she's not the one that's going to die. But, because it's kind of been there, done that. Got a copy of the facsimile edition. But my final freaking, I got all excited on eBay. Did you know, Cory, that when in Hogan's Heroes, the first issue has the same cover as the last? And you know how you tell the difference? You know how you tell the difference? One is 12 cents, one is 15 cents. You find this in a lot of Dell and a lot of Gold Key books where they just reprinted the first issue because it'd been so long. They just gave it either a different color, a different price, or whatever. I think there was Brotherhood of the Spear that the number 1 had a painted cover and number 18 had a drawn cover. So I get up and I see, somebody's offered me a book. Hogan's Heroes #1, one of my girls. Buy it. And then I looked, shit, I just bought issue 9, which I have 2 copies of because I've already made that mistake once. One of them's on the eBays, by the way. So anyways, the guy was nice enough to cancel it. So I turned around and bought his #1. Offered him $10 off, which he offered me $10. So again, that was going to be the geeking side of thing, but I feel bad because I have people cancel things on me all the time, and I'm like, whatever, I don't care. Just I want to get it back on eBay, and I feel bad about it. I've only ever had one guy cuss me up and down the block. You ruined my sale. Well, you can send it if you want. I'm just going to return it. Just block me and go on to your business like I blocked you. So Kray admits his mistakes. And now I got a Hogan's Heroes 1. I was so happy I went out and bought Hogan's Heroes 2. I have my Hogan's Hero run done. Cory, what do you, I guess that's getting into my geeking. Cory, but what are you freaking on?
I told you a little about this. I had a dream in which you were closing a shop.
Again?
And it was a mess. People had come in and they ransacked everything, and new comics and old comics were just stacked everywhere, and it was still pretty crowded. And as I went through the shop, I noticed, look, around the corner, there are all these video games. And what it was, you had bought a new video game. Like when you first started the shop, you had the X-Men game, right?
That was a holdover from Dan and Brian. Yeah,
right.
They had it.
But in the dream world, you had kept buying games and on and on and on. And you had
if you remember, Cory,
big thing.
The original plan for the shop was what eventually painting the graphic novel wall, we were going to do video games.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, so that may be where that came from.
But you had video games all around through kind of this back alley, not more like a hallway that was lined with video games that led over to what we called Ming the Merciless, which was a Chinese restaurant. And that was all full of games. And it was, oh my gosh, I need to play at least one game on each game before he closes. I was very sad that the shop was closing. So Frank Miller has been doing some covers for Marvel.
I almost want to buy that.
I look at the covers and I think they're very cool. And I think I'm the only one because I cannot believe how many people are saying, Frank Miller's art is terrible. This sucks. I've never seen anything this bad. My kid could draw better. Blah, 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 blah. You want to know how old I am, Joe?
I think you're my age, but go ahead.
I'm so old, I remember when Ronin came out and everybody said, Frank Miller's art is terrible. I'm never buying anything he does ever again. And when Dark Knight came out, Frank Miller's art is terrible. I'm never buying anything he does ever again. And then Sin City came out and Frank Miller's art is terrible. I'm never buying anything he does again. Then Jim Lee started drawing in that style on the book Deathblow and everybody was like, this is the coolest style ever. Oh my gosh, Jim Lee is a genius. And every time Frank Miller puts out something, people complain about the art. And the thing that gets me is there are people who are putting up stuff that he drew in 1979 and 1980 and 1981 and 82 when Frank Miller was just doing layouts. And layouts back in the 70s were super duper loose. To the point where some of the stuff they were putting was, this was just laid out by Frank Miller and it was drawn by Klaus Janson. This was laid out by Frank Miller and it was drawn by Joseph Rubinstein, and on and on and on. And it's like, you never really liked Frank Miller. You liked Joseph Rubinstein, and you like Klaus Janson, and you like this person and that person. When I see Miller's art, it reminds me a lot of some of the masters of comic art, in that as they got older, they broke their art down almost to the minimum. Like Alex Toth always said, eliminate every line you can and then draw the hell out of what's left. Miller's stuff is very stylized. It's almost cubist. It's art. It's not photorealism. And Uncle Cory is going to give you a little bit of art history. Joe, when you go to a museum, you see that most of the older art is done in a photorealistic style. Do you know why artists don't use that anymore?
I don't know, because we got photos now.
We have cameras. So nobody goes to an artist, paint my portrait, and expects it to be photorealistic. That's what happened with art. Once photos became good enough that you didn't need an artist to paint your portrait or paint a countryside, you could have a picture of it that was just as good or not better. Artists began to experiment. They started drawing in different styles. Vincent van Gogh at the time, not very popular at all because it was not photorealistic. But as time has gone on and we no longer need photorealistic art, more abstract art is what people want. When you go to galleries, modern art is done in very different styles that play more on perception and emotion than realism. We don't need photorealistic superhero art anymore. We've got movies that do it as well, if not better, than Neil Adams could do. I love me some Neil Adams, but we don't need art like that anymore because we can see superheroes on our TV anytime we want. We need, as art grows and as artists grow, their work naturally changes. Frank Miller's art is distilled down to give mood and feel, and each line has purpose, rather than that cover of Wolverine #1 where it's, okay, let's draw a picture of Wolverine as realistically as possible. We don't need that anymore. We've got Hugh Jackman. And the number of people who do not comprehend that boggles my mind. They are announcing all the TV schedules during the midst of the writer's strike. So this fall on ABC, not one single scripted program. It's all reality and game shows and sports. And the other networks are looking at the same thing, because even if the writer's strike ends right now, it's going to take a while for them to get back into production. For all the talk we heard about, oh, they're stockpiling scripts. And we've learned that they really weren't stockpiling scripts. So this fall on TV, you could probably skip all of the networks unless you really want to see Celebrity Wheel of Fortune and the 14 Bachelor series. So, And then the last thing I am freaking on, you know how much I love the collected X-Men trade paperbacks, where they put the stories out in the chronological order, the order that the editorial office wants you to read them in. They have reached the end of the Trial of X as we go to Fall of X. So I edited, I messaged my friend who works in the Marvel collected editions and asked, is there going to be more? Because there haven't been in the last two previews. And they were very blunt. They said, no, Trial of X number 12 is the last one. They didn't sell as well as we had hoped. And I sent a note back saying, please thank everyone who's involved in it. I really enjoyed it. I have a short box where I could just sit and read this current run of X-Men. It's all in order. It's a wonderful thing, and I'm sorry it's not continuing. So, Joe, what are you geeking on?
Well, I was a little worried at previews that I didn't see Knights of the Dinner Table in it. And it happens because occasionally they will they get too far ahead. I think that I forget what the last one, I was trying to look it up to what the last one was that was being solicited. However, on the back of issue 303, which I just got, says as of issue 310 in 6 months, they are going to go to a bi-monthly schedule and double size their books into perfect bound graphic novel format, which I thought's great because now they're able to add more story, add more content, and it should be kind of exciting to see what happens. The Knights of the Dinner Table magazine will continue. Well, I don't know. They say 6 months, but like I said, this is 303, and I don't know how much has been solicited. Excuse me already.
Yeah, they've been far behind for a long time.
Yeah. And they say, this will give them a chance to maybe catch up and stay caught up. So I don't know if I talked about it. I read a graphic novel, Power Girl, The Power Trip. Jeff Johns, Austin Gray, Jimmy Palmiotti, Amanda Connors, and Paul Mounts. Reprinting JSA Classified 1 through 4, which is a lot of fun, and Power Girl 1 through 12.
They've solicited up to 309. Okay. And the last one that came out is 303.
Okay,
Knights of the Dinner Table number 304 was supposed to come out in November of last year.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if Diamond will can it on them, but they do keep publishing. So hopefully this will let them catch up. I enjoyed this Power Girl book quite a bit. I remember reading the original run. They did extremely well with their character, and you never got a feeling that it was just titillation. You know what I'm saying? I mean, just happened to be a woman superhero that was well endowed. So I did enjoy it. Off of the eBays, I did find a beat up copy of Batman versus the Fearsome Foursome. So I'm kind of excited about that. Also off the eBays, I was looking for the Total Recall signed edition. They had one that was signed by, there's the regular edition and then the limited edition, limited to 5,000 copies, that were signed by Elliot S. Megan and Tom Lyle, who did the official adaptation of the movie. What I found was a guy who bundled that with an Alien Predator Deadliest of Species that was signed by Jackson Geiss, and a Hellshock #1 alternative that was signed by Jay Lee at a pretty decent price. I tell you, I'm going nuts for signed books. I love signed books. And finally, I did jump on the how do you say it? Akron Press bandwagon.
Yes,
because he very brilliantly mentioned that one of his books that he had, The Adventures of Pussycat, which was on the list of things for me to get, that he would be taking out of print because apparently the rights holders still have it. And whether they're doing something or not isn't the point. The point is he's only working stuff, how does he say it, that is orphaned?
Public domain or orphaned. And what orphaned means is it may still be under copyright, but there's no one around to claim it. Such as you will find a lot of video games out, computer games, where the company still owns it, but the company no longer exists. So there's no one to enforce the copyright. It's like, okay, yes, Apogee Software owns this game. However, Apogee Software went out of business in 1992.
So you can't come get some. Let's see. What else do I got going? Oh, anyways, I ordered the one because, as I said, he said he's taking it off the market. And they made an announcement of it, which probably gives them a chance to sell as many of them as possible for guys like me that have been thinking about it and finally did it.
Now, shall I give the history of Pussycat?
Yeah.
Now, you will, when you, there was one magazine, but what it was, Pussycat was a comic strip. It was a spy parody with a sexy girl that ran in Martin Goodman's sweat magazines, the men magazines, the kind of magazines that men like.
Sweat.
Well, it was about men and their adventures and saving women and fighting Nazis and all of that. And it was a strip that ran in those magazines. And then in the 60s, Goodman decided to try a black and white magazine because he saw how good that Creepy and Eerie were doing. But he didn't want to do a horror magazine because he was kind of scared of horror after what had happened in the 50s. So instead, he did this sexy spy stuff. And a lot of different people worked on it. Wally Wood did some stuff, et cetera, et cetera. It was marketed under Goodman and not Marvel, even though Marvel's the one who kind of packaged it. So when it came out, I believe the copyright was for Magazine Enterprises, which is why Marvel can't reprint it. Marvel doesn't own it. It was one of the things that Goodman kept to himself when he left. He was like, okay, the copyright for things under Magazine Enterprises, I still own the copyright for. And they had done a search for copyright. When they did the search, they found out it was Copyright Magazine Enterprises, which no longer existed. So, hey, it's been orphaned. We can put it out. However, Goodman's grandson said, no, the family still owns the copyright. Here's the paperwork for it. And they said, oh, okay, we're pulling it off the market. They announced on a Friday that we're pulling it off the market. And when you pull a book from Barnes & Noble, they don't do anything over the weekend. So as long as you ordered it over the weekend, you could still get it.
Which I did. And it got me off my butt to finally order it.
And what do you think of their packaging at Barnes & Noble?
It was adequate. However, I have a male person who puts packages like that in the door. They basically put it in some real, sealed it in card. I don't even call it cardboard. But yeah, no, I done did it. Trying to find that. What's the name of that Frank Miller?
He did a Wolverine cover that everybody's upset about.
Yeah, but I found it.
Wolverine and Ghost Rider.
Ghost Rider, Wolverine, Weapons of Vengeance, Alpha, which I don't think's been solicited yet. Or has it? I don't remember. It's all a blur. It must be coming up. I don't see it on the. I'm looking on the what I've ordered already, and I don't see it. So, oh well. Anything else you're geeking on, Cory?
Oh, my geeking?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about mine for some time now.
All right, I've got 3 geekings. One, tomorrow, you know how I said that the networks are announcing their fall schedules, et cetera, et cetera. It's also for cable companies. Cable companies such as Warner will be announcing tomorrow that AEW is getting a Saturday show, AEW Collision. I don't care what people say. That's a success. Could the shows be better? Of course they could. Are there problems with their business? Yeah, here and there are problems with their business. But the fact that their TV partner is like, yeah, we're very happy with the product you're giving us. Now that it's over, I've started reading Jason Aaron's Avengers. This was one of those where I read the first issues, and then when I read, he's got a plan that goes for this amount of time, and while there'll be different stories in there, it's all one big long story. So I'm now up to about issue 20. This is one that it'll probably be 2 omnibuses, just like his Thor run, and just like his Thor run, this really is amazingly good. One of the things about these big runs is I don't see how they can go back to certain things. After the Jason Aaron Avengers run, there's going to be another Avengers series, but I can't see them ever going back to the 70s where it's we're hanging out at the Avengers mansion and it's Moses Magnum is coming to town and we're going to fight them. No, the Avengers has now kind of become this global defense force. And to scale it down, I think people would not like that. And part of it is in the movies where they built it up so big. But also there's that thing about scaling. And Stan Lee always talked about it. He said one of the problems with books like the Avengers is you'll have Power Man show up, the original Power Man, and he fights the Avengers to a standstill, and they're barely able to defeat him. And the Living Laser shows up in the same thing. But then a few months later, you have the Emissaries of Evil, which are Power Man and this character and this character and this character, who on their own were able to battle the Avengers to a standstill. But now it takes 4 of them to battle the same Avengers to a standstill. You keep upping the stakes and upping the stakes. And hopefully the next writer realizes, you know what, I can't go bigger than Jason Aaron, so I need to go in another direction. But as it is, man, this is a lot of fun. And as I'm reading the story, it is so clear that just like Thor, he's like, all right, I need to put this in place and this in place and this in place. And all these different plot threads are being dropped. But each story arc is fulfilling on its own. Joe, have you read Jason Aaron's Avengers run?
It became apparent as I was reading it that I wasn't retaining what was going on issue to issue. So I stopped at about 50.
Okay, so I'm just got done with the Vampire Civil War.
Okay, yeah, I've covered through that.
Oh, man, was that fun.
Yeah. What a brilliant idea, too.
So I'm looking forward to this. And it's funny because Butch emailed me and I said, oh, yeah, I'm reading the Avengers run. And he's like, isn't that old? And I said, well, yeah, it started in 2019. But now that it's over, I can sit and read it at my own speed. And more and more, I'm like that, where I just want to wait till it's done. Then I can read it and not worry about, oh, I've caught up and now I have to wait for the next thing. Last thing that I am geeking on, the publisher who did Pussycat has finished their collection of all of the Seaboard Atlas stuff. And in my last monthly update for the lifetime subscription, it was about a third of it, but the rest has been printed, including the really rare magazines that good luck finding them anywhere. I have looked for years and have never seen any of the Atlas black and white magazines, but they were able to get them. They were able to get them scanned and printed as books. Now I don't have to look very much anymore. And in just the Atlas books, if I would have just bought the Atlas books, which I've wanted since I was a kid, because it was the comic company that went under right before I started reading comics. If I just would have bought those in softcover, that would have been as much as a lifetime subscription. So while I'm not going to read everything, boy, I'm saving a lot of money on books that I don't have to buy now because, oh, that's going to be on my lifetime subscription. Oh, that's going to be on my lifetime subscription. I have 3 short boxes full of stuff from Guadalajara Comics. I'm sure that they will be putting out stuff in the future that I would have bought, but I don't have to, because I have the lifetime subscription. So for me, the math just works, and I'm very happy about that. Believe it or not, kids, you've listened to us blather on about funny books for 2 hours.
Good for you.
And as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. Joe?
Well, I got to tell you, I was at McDonald's the other day, and they called out order 867, and I yelled 5309. Nobody laughed. Then I felt old. Ate my burger in the playground area.
Well, the crickets liked it.
Well, somebody's got to.
Well, yeah.
You know what it's time for? I feel like dancing. Yeah, hit my music. Funk is on a roll. Funk is on a roll.
Hey, yo. Can somebody call my mama? It's about to get funky up in here. Know what I'm saying? Yeah.
We done, bitches!